Welcome to Shadyside! Hey there, it's Kristen and today we're talking about the first film in Netflix's Fear Street trilogy, Fear Street 1994. Starring Kiana Madeira, Olivia Welsh, Benjamin Flores Jr., and more. This first film follows a group of teens who take on an evil force that has plagued their notorious town for centuries. Consider subscribing if you like my videos and drop down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this first Fear Street movie. Were you a big fan of the R.L. Stine books and how did this hold up for you? So I am a huge R.L. Stine stan, a Goosebumps fan, a Fear Street fan. I grew up with those, and so to see that we were getting a Fear Street trilogy that interweaves into each other and tells this compelling generational horror story was so exciting to me. Fear Street 1994 that we're talking about today, and then next week and the week after we got Fear Street 1978 and then Fear Street 1666. And what I love about that is that this is definitely loosely based on Fear Street books. It's not like a specific adaptation of one book, but they definitely took inspiration from Fear Street sagas and pulled certain names like Good and Fear and different time periods like 1666 and things like that and incorporated them into this story. So, you know, there's definitely some inspiration from there, but they kind of told a brand new story here. I love the direct references to Fear Street in this first film. You know, they had books that were written by Robert Lawrence, aka R.L. Stine, and we got to see those little Easter eggs in there. They also made a lot of references to horror films from those decades. So in 1994, the first 10 minutes are definitely a Scream reference with Maya Hawke playing the Drew Barrymore type character. And I'm excited to see how they do that as well in the 1978 and 1666 versions, because I think that makes this probably a difficult but also really fun project to work on for the director and the actors, because you get to basically make 3 different movies, tackle 3 different types of horror genres, infuse things in there, make sure the stories interweave and connect. This story really focused on the idea that Shadysiders are people who are kind of dealt a bad hand, that they're cursed or that there's something going on there. What's really great about Fear Street as a franchise and also as this film series is that they are telling stories of horror through a teenage lens and what people are actually dealing with and going through. Our lead characters are people of color, our lead characters are queer characters. These are people that we don't always necessarily get to see succeeding and surviving in horror movies leading this movie, and we're tackling everything from systemic oppression to an LGBTQ story that I don't think we've really seen in the horror genre before. While I mentioned also paying tribute to movies like Scream and slashers and kind of like that classic 90s horror. Being able to see characters and people that we don't always necessarily get to see leading horror movies in these positions is just really powerful. The other thing that I think this film did well is sort of serving as a little bit of a setup to things that I think are going to be important and called back upon as we get into the second and third movies. Now, as someone who is a huge Fear Street stan, while I enjoyed all of those aspects of the film, I have to say this first film definitely underwhelmed me. We start off so strong with those first 10 minutes, that Scream tribute. I was really excited. We get into these intro credit scenes that really explain the history of Sarah Fear and all of the struggles and horrors that have gone on in Shadyside for decades and generations. And then I felt like the story really kind of slowed down and didn't have much going on until we got to the big kills towards the end of this film. I thought that there was very little stakes for a really long time in this film. It would have made a little bit more sense to have more consistency versus like we start high, nothing's really happening, we end high. I'm not sure if it was a combination of writing as well as some of the acting performances, but I didn't find these characters as compelling to focus on, especially some of the side friend characters. I just felt like a lot of the characters were missing connections between each other and likability. I think when it came to the 90s aspect, other than like, you know, some references to like AIM and, you know, some of the 90s movie tropes that were thrown in, it didn't really feel super 90s. It felt like they were trying to rely heavily on the music to really evoke that vibe, and at times, especially at the beginning of the film, I thought the music was overkill. There were so many like well-known songs being played every like 2 seconds to go along with whatever someone who's walking down the hallway or sitting on the bus is feeling at that time. It just felt a little too on the nose, like they're trying to handhold you to show what people are feeling at that exact moment. I thought it was too much. I also felt like the characters made a lot of decisions that I didn't understand or that I thought were more complicated than they needed to be. Towards the end of the film, they make this decision that they're gonna need to kill the character Sam and bring her back to life in order to basically stop all of these Shadyside killers from the past that are like coming back from the dead, which is like, a crazy story, but in order to do that, instead of doing something simple like drowning her and then resuscitating her, they decide to have her overdose and then bring her back to life with EpiPens, and then when that doesn't work, then they decide to drown her. It just felt like they were adding a lot of levels to things that maybe they could have, like, done something a little bit simpler. And then around this time, you know, we've still got our whole crew. The only real, like, kills that have gone on have not been anything super crazy. It's like, you know, just a quick stab or something like that and the person's dead. The fact that this was an R-rated Fear Street, I think, really was shocking to me, so I was expecting a little bit more, and then I felt like we got that towards the end. You know, we got people's heads going through the bread slicer and stuff, and so while I was like impressed that they did decide to kill off characters that I didn't think that they would, at the same time I didn't feel like those deaths had as big of an impact as they could have, because I didn't really find those characters likable. I didn't really feel like they all had a strong connection together. I think it ends in a place that is intriguing and makes you want to know more. You think that things are fixed, and then it turns out, oop, we got a whole new twist coming in, and that's continuing the story. I'm really excited to get into Fear Street 1978 as they go to camp. We got Sadie Sink in that one, and I'm really feeling optimistic that these films are going to get a little bit better as they go along, even though this first one left me a bit underwhelmed. When it comes down to it, while I enjoyed a lot of the aspects that they were trying to bring into this film, like focusing on people who don't always get the shine in horror movies, bringing in a more diverse cast, making those fun Easter egg references to Fear Street and R.L. Stine and Scream, and setting up things for the future movies, I think this movie was anticlimactic. I was expecting a bit more, and I didn't really believe this crew of friends together. I'm excited to learn the truth about Shadyside and Sarah Fear and what went on there, and I think the story that they're setting up is going to be really intriguing. I just don't think this first film was quite what I was hoping for. I would love to hear what you guys thought about this first installment in the Fear Street trilogy. Did you love these books growing up like me? If you guys like this one, you can check out more of my Fear Street videos coming up right over here, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!